Anyway, that's the end of my presentation, so I'll take some questions if anyone has any. I think, right? Okay.
How much do the posing kind of situations scare you now that you've allowed to be successful? What do you think around that?
The posing situation is a business that that was overwhelmed by the amount of demand they had on Groupon and didn't feel like they should do it again. So the vast majority of businesses that are featured on Groupon, we surveyed every business and with over 3,000 results, 95% are satisfied. So if there was a story written for about every local merchant that regretted their decision to do newspaper advertising, there would be nothing else in the newspaper. So we look at it as, let's minimize that percentage of people that have a bad experience. Let's invest in having world-class merchant services and educating people about this new model of local commerce. But it doesn't scare me. I mean, I believe in what we're doing.
Can you talk about your first, like, granular steps that you took from switching from ThePoint to doing Groupon? Like, you had a WordPress blog post. Can you talk specifically about how it is that you switched and what the first handful of days looked like?
Sure. It wasn't a black and white switch, actually. This is interesting. It was kind of like grass growing, where one day it's like, oh my gosh, we're spending all our time on Groupon. So actually, a lot of the core development team continued working on ThePoint, and then I was working on this blog, and I built a FileMaker app to distribute all the coupons, and that's what we were doing. And then slowly, there was more and more. It became more and more valid to invest in spending time on Groupon. And two things. I mean, the success we were having with it were energizing in a way that the whole team just got behind it very quickly. And the second thing is that, well, at first we looked at it as a service that, I mean, it was the tail that wagged the dog. It was going to bring in money while we solved the world's unsolvable problems working on ThePoint. We started to feel like, when we started hearing feedback from the merchants and customers, we realized, ironically, that we were doing far more good with Groupon than we ever had or probably ever would with ThePoint. So that allowed us to really get behind it and get excited about it.
Any advice on early employee hiring?
Advice on early employee hiring. Avoid titles, stuff that as much as you can, I guess. Do them if you have to in order to hire, but don't create too much structure around that stuff because you may need to make changes later. I probably have other advice too, but for whatever reason, I thought that piece of advice. You on that side, with the green shirt.
Now that you're rich, you can hear about activism.
I never really cared about activism. I care about social engineering and doing things that make a big difference, and activism happens to be an area where you can have a big impact. That's not entirely true, but I like the way it sounds.
It seems like some of the broad focus of the point may make sense in Groupon 2.0 in that line curve that you drew. Groupon 1.0, you maybe needed to focus, but some of the broader actions flared down.
Right, so he said some of the broader focus of Groupon, or of ThePoint, might actually make sense in a Groupon 2.0 world, and I agree with that. I mean, the biggest problem with Groupon is how do you get to scale? It's the classic chicken and egg, ThePoint, is how do you get to scale? And we never had a solution for that. So all the examples that I talked about when I was pitching the business and the ones that we tried to go after were these massive change initiatives, and the small ones just weren't nearly as interesting to people.
DC's always asked in pitch meetings, how will you defend against competition that will inevitably come? The question to you is, how are you defending against competition that you're seeing every day?
By building an awesome product. So just the lead that we've managed to maintain in the face of thousands, I think, or hundreds of clones, I think speaks to the passion that we have for building something that's awesome and just an awesome customer experience. I think all these ideas around network effects are overrated. It's nice to have that kind of such stuff strategically built into your model, but how far did network effects get MySpace? There's more examples of businesses with those network effects getting overtaken by somebody who out-innovated them. than otherwise. I think eBay is a good example of someone where almost the exception that proves the rule, where the network effects are so strong that they could just survive off of the critical mass they have.
Now, how did you evolve the creative flavor of your editorial copy? Because it's so unique and it has such a voice. How did that come about?
It started that way from the beginning. So I played in a band with one of our community managers at ThePoint in college, and he was just a funny guy, and he started doing the writing, and we always had a firm belief in building a product that we wanted to use. And part of that was creating awesome editorial copy that didn't feel like people were reading advertising. And as we've grown, actually, the increasing pressure that there is to conform to the way that businesses typically behave is just a greater motivation for us to act out and be weird. So we now do things like we launched this thing called Groupon, which is a scholarship fund for children to get a full college scholarship if their parents met using a Groupon. So, this is one of those things where I say, I could pretend like the reason we did that is because we want to help the kids, but I just think it's funny to create these awkward first interactions on a date, where you're having a good date and someone pulls out a Groupon, and it's like you have to confront the issue of having babies. So it's fun to run a big company.
So you take a large cut out of sometimes I hear all of it.
That's not true. But what we do is sustainable, yes.
So any incentives for hiring early salespeople? What sort of incentives do you give them?
Equity. They make a lot of they're miners, so a lot of their commission plans are based off the commission plan we had when we thought we'd be doing, $100,000 of revenue a year in one of the cities. So they make a ton of money.
No salary.
We had money, so we gave people salary and everything, and then we just paid them based off the commission. We had raised money.
You test your writers?
Our writers, not yet, but we'd love to. And it's just one of those, when you're growing as fast as we are, stuff like that, and some A/B testing, also any kind of internal-facing optimization, we put on. So we do stupid things like we have a staff of 10 people probably copying the records out of Salesforce manually into our Groupon platform, just because it's not worth our time to take one of our engineers for a week and have them plan to the API.
Last question.
Right there. Did you have a question? No, he doesn't.
So you guys are based in Chicago, right? Talk about some of the advantages of running, starting up in Chicago versus other advantages, disadvantages versus Chicago?
The advantages are that, I was lucky to get tapped into a very entrepreneurial group in Chicago with my co-founders. I wouldn't have been able to do any of this if I didn't have the co-founders that I had. And they came to me and said, why don't you drop out of school and turn this into a company? I'll give you a bunch of money. And I was like, could you do that? That's crazy. I didn't know what VC was. I didn't know what angel capital was or anything. It's not part of the culture in the way that it is here.
That's the point.
Huh? Yeah. And so Chicago's been great for a business like ours, where it's largely a hybrid technology human business, right? We have 2,500 people, maybe 100 of them are in engineering, and everybody else is doing other stuff. The downside is, while there's engineering talent in Chicago, it's a shallow pool. So we've kind of reluctantly realized that we have to have an office out here and hire engineers out here. That's it, thanks guys.